Hi, everybody. It's a Thursday night again. Hope everybody is really doing well and are doing the best they can. And so we have the last question that comes out of the seminar from Toshi, plus some others, of course. I'll try to get to some. I'm going to have to put my glasses on a bit. And Toshi says, you have mentioned that the heart center is able to combine energy from the three lower systems and able to bridge energy to the upper systems. Is there more you can say about this combining process? That would be helpful. One thing that is always important to try and keep in the back of your mind, that our personality system is composed of energy, period. I think I did say this at the seminar, but it is literally a composite of how we use energy that's operating in us through those centers. It's like a valve, and these centers from that have been worked on in the past and the present for us literally are, let's say, the energy is cultivated from them, and they are at various levels of development. These centers are. So when you're dealing with that kind of a concept, and you ask this question, you have to include the fact that every single center has links that are deeper than the last part. So it is said that they have 7 levels of development possible. It's possible. But that idea might be used to kind of explain what's happening. Those first 3 centers are very much involved with sending energy up to the upper centers to try and turn them on a little bit. And they turn on at their, depending on what lives you've had, at levels that they can be helped to turn on at. Okay, give an example. Let's say at one time, your heart center has been helped at that lower, in so-called lower aspect. What it really means is that which is affiliated with the personality. That's lower aspect. So when we're engaging with things, we go upper, lower. You got my drift. You see my hand coming down. And lower, upper. This is the kind of, we're basically talking 2-dimensionally often. When we try to talk 3-dimensionally, we run into trouble because we can't visualize very well, or many of us can't, what a 3-dimensional thing would look like. Well, turn to your left or right and pick a chair. You see the outline of the chair, and you look at it, and you can see it's got length, height, width, 3 dimensions. But when you're looking at a personality, you don't consider the possibility often that your expression currently is very flexible, meaning reactive, interactive with ages 4, 10, 15, 20, whatever. Looking into that timeline and watching your personality in a moment allows you to recognize the possibility, if your perception is okay to do that, meaning if you are allowing yourself to do that, and notice, oh, that's interesting. that really comes from when I was about 15 years old and I was reacting this way, and therefore I react this way. And my image, of course, is to become an adult like my parents were. And so from 15 years old, you assess what your parents were like and you become like that. And that's the end of it. You never find out that you actually are doing that, but you're acting out your parental reflexive background. Very frustrating to even think of this. Well, let's try and tie that into a center, and this one in the heart center, for example. And this will tie into the next question in relationship to Deborah Olshansky from Tennessee. And let's try and do that. You look at a chakra system that is interactive with various levels that each chakra may be on. Wow. Okay. So let's say your root center is linked up with your solar plexus, and so is your gonad center. So we'll call that level 3. They have found a balance somehow, literally with that emotional center. Called an emotional center. It's not always an emotional center at all, because it has a mental aspect. It has an engagement with a perception beyond what you can assess. And that means there's different levels of that center that can be functional. But let's say you were very functional with that root center, and it was able to lift and engage at a higher level right up to the crown center, as an example. So it touched the gonad center, the solar plexus, the heart center, the throat, any other centers that may be behind there, the brow and the crown. And it links up, and it's linked up tightly right about here. But not this life. But in another life it was. Okay, just a sec. Then the gonad center in another life had linked up in a similar way and is bringing energy from that gonad center upward. Oh, by the way, it's kind of following the line of that root center that expressed itself up to the crown center as well. And this may have taken 3 lives, it may have taken 1, it may have taken 30 lives, it may have taken more. Meaning you are quite comfortable having those protective centers and willful centers on to do the bidding of a personality as the personality sees the world. Perception of things as you understand them may shift from one person to another. As you see things, you may see something different than another. Doesn't make you right, doesn't make them right. It just means that is a level of perception that you are noting from your perspective. So that's more than one dimension. Let's say the solar plexus is opening as well. Now remember, the heart center has been affected by the root and the gonad center, and so is the solar plexus. That solar plexus begins to function stronger. It implements the gonad and the root center and links itself upward again towards above the head, the crown center, over a few lifetimes. What that number is, you can hear theories that are tremendously broad. You can 100 lifetimes, 1,000 lifetimes, a single lifetime, 4 lifetimes, all of this stuff. But as that solar plexus, root, and gonad center find balance and are linked up into another level, a higher, let's say a crown level, just for argument's sake, then you have a relative balance. Carl Jung, psychologist, would have called that an individualized person.
Individuation.
And then it linked into being called individuation. If you, whatever that meant. Now, if you want to delve into Carl Jung, be my guest because it's very interesting. Individuation is a very single word meaning something very broad, much broader than most people think. Just because you're getting along in the world doesn't mean you're individuated. You're just getting along in the world. It's really good. It's great. Now, in this orientation, the heart center was stimulated, the throat was stimulated, the brow, the crown, and links in behind the neck and behind the chest and front as well. They were all stimulated, but they were not major centers. And if you have the root, gonad, and solar plexus interacting with each other, and the solar plexus is a major center, your personality is very broad. You're intellectually interesting and interested in many things. Your interests cover all kinds of material, but still you're focused on the personalizations of your own self-interest, and this is real. Meaning, whatever comes out of your mouth, you think is right. Now, here's where the heart center comes in. All of that is true. In various divisions or little engagements, increments of what a life might look like. So here we go. Here's this heart center poking its way in. It's stimulated already by these three levels. It's held from coming on too strongly by a kind of brake system, meaning those higher levels do not want to hurt the lower system. Someone finding out that they are not as wondrous and wonderful as they thought they were might hurt their survival system, depending on whether that person can allow themselves to look at that as if it was learning rather than they're wrong versus right. This is the personality's orientation and necessary for its survival. And it's kind of semi-balance in life. When the heart center begins to open towards becoming an aspect of a major center, something similar to the root and gonad center operating into the solar plexus and through up to the top of the head. But the solar plexus isn't a major center yet. The major centers are root, gonad center. You engage and balance based on the self-validation that is necessary, and you're not able to allow yourself to move into a state where you can watch all this happening. Heart center starts to open. It changes how you look at the world because it starts to help you to watch the world initially in a way that would be generous to those around you and in you. In other words, yourself and how you see the world. You begin to see it as if it's could be true, may not be true. But what begins to happen in the heart, it moves you towards a softening of how the personality is. It makes you more sympathetic. And I'm saying sympathetic in, yes, partly the old traditional way, but mainly in how we think of it today. Someone is hurting, you understand how difficult that would be. And you begin to realize that that person may act in various ways just to try and survive their hurting. And you begin to understand them. You haven't reached that compassionate point, and you haven't reached the stage where you can actually perceive that flow in you while it's happening in them. But there are certain links that can begin to happen there. Because of the impact that it has on the personality itself, there are moments where you just seem empty. You don't have, it's like as if it's trying to help you to understand a different way of looking at things. And you don't have as many of the personalized past ways of seeing or perceiving things. And that can cause a problem with couples. I think I've tried to show you a little bit about what Toshi's question is there. And a problem with couples moving into Deborah's question relating to this sense of emptiness, and how does it affect a relationship that you may have? It's got a number of things the Heart Center does that are purposeful in it. Number one, it does affect the personality. There's no question about it. But slowly, really slowly, because as the Heart Center opens a little bit, that opening still does reflect the root gonad and solar plexus. If you don't have what you might call a stiff way of looking at things related to a belief, then you're inquiring all the time to yourself what is happening inside yourself, and you're curious and you're trying to figure out just what's going on. In a kind of a way, you're pulling back a bit and going inside, as opposed to being on the outside only with our personalizations. When you pull back, a partner may think that you're pulling back from them, and you're not. If that partner were perceptive, he or she would be able to recognize that the Heart Center had just come on, and you are now looking inside at the Heart Center, as opposed to something occurring on the outside in your personality, and you're pulling away from the partner. The partner would see that as not pulling away from him or her. They would see that as they've connected with that Heart Center. Oh, this is really interesting. And they're trying to learn how to watch themselves and others from the inside out, rather from the outside constructed way of seeing things in. This is not easy for those who have a Heart Center open. For those who have had Heart Centers open in other lifetimes, they will become sympathetic rather quickly, but also then they start to move into a perception related to energy, and they're perceiving where the energy in themselves is that is mirroring the energy in another. And that's based on construction, internal construction. They have had these experiences before, and they are attempting to revisit, or it's happening to them automatically, and they're trying to make sense of it in this lifetime. This is a relationship with having had it open before. But if you have not had it open before, you also have a sense of, oh, am I in the wrong relationship? This has happened to so many people, and it's so sad. They're not in the wrong relationship, but they're acting like they are because they want to regurgitate, mirror a kind of sensation or feeling that they had previously in the personality that made them feel kind of wondrous and comfortable, and they're trying to engage with that level that is in that personality form, and they believe life should be like that. It's not their fault. It's not the fault of another that they're doing that to. It is engagement with early learning, early perception, misunderstandings about how this three-dimensional interactive life is really four-dimensional, five-dimensional, call it what you want. Many people have called it five-dimensional. I'm now at fifth-dimensional orientation. I'm not interested in that three-dimensional, time-oriented fourth dimension, blah, 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 blah. It's perhaps a way a person has to think before they can engage in a different manner. We are all in a process of growth, but the vulnerability of that empty feeling has nothing to do with a partner. It has everything to do with misunderstanding how, and not really understanding how their personality functions and how legitimately okay it is. And we're just learning something different. So you have to pull back from your normal reactive state and soften that down so you can allow yourself to begin to understand broader without judging and assessing how things should be. This is not so simple because we have all kinds of folks saying how things should be. Not too many saying, okay, I'm having these feelings, but it may not have to do with me or my partner. It may have to do with something that's going on inside of me for a moment before I can link this up with my root gonad, solar plexus personality orientations that are very advanced, one could say, or not. But then when you have a different perspective, then you begin to understand, my goodness, every time a center begins to function in a broader manner, it has an impact on my personality. And I have to pull back a bit and try to understand broader than my initial personality wants to believe, because it validates then me, or I'm talking to me, but it's a general me, all me's, to broaden out and understand deeper than you naturally and normally would understand your personality as it was previously, because previously you validated by your personalized responses. Oh, that's wrong. Oh, that's right. Oh, this is it. Now you're looking at it and saying, okay, well, that's interesting. People think, why do they think that way? They have a different approach in their perception but it doesn't necessarily mean they're right or wrong. Either does it mean that way for you. That's part of growing through you. And by the way, it can also happen when the throat center opens. Often when I'm giving these talks, you'll hear my voice shift and change. My throat center may open, and it's as if I'm talking through, as if I have a cold. Another time, clear as a bell, because the frequency is different than the one that I'm used to. Then I have a frog in my throat. That's weird. No, it's not weird. It's the adjustment that occurs in an expression in a form, a body, a way of talking that relates directly to a shift in frequency relative to who he or she may be talking to. And this is, as a matter of fact, quite profound when you think about it. Okay, here's a question. If you are talking to someone with a different frequency in their throat center than you, have you ever noticed there's a slight change in expression, tones, how they function? If you notice that, then you might begin to realize that you're a composite, yes, of energy, but their frequency may be a frequency that is slightly different than the one that is relatively dominant in you for that throat center. Your expression. If it bothers you, then you can look in your body to find out just exactly where that bother is coming from. You may notice your root center, for example, and that may tell you that their throat center frequency is your root center frequency. If it's an emotional dispositional structure, their expression with that center may be the same frequency that you have in your solar plexus. These frequencies are not all the same with everybody, counter to how some people believe. And if you really are interested in various frequencies and you start researching, you will find out that many traditional older books in the East have many different frequencies in many of these chakras. If you have a slight bit of clairvoyance that isn't affected by your belief, in other words, the way you want it to be, you will notice different frequencies, not only in them, others, but in you. And these frequencies, as I talked about on the weekend, are relative to an engagement with levels within the frequency. So all frequencies that we see with our eyes, all of those frequencies have an early development part and a broader development part. And way out at the infinite levels, you will not be able to see them because they will pass through your ability to perceive in that very small area that we see either clairvoyantly, because that would be, if you're still engaging clairvoyantly with frequency or color, you're still in alignment with the mindset or the perception set of those 7 colors that we have in relationship to looking at that small area that we can see in terms of various frequencies. In other words, you can't see the TV's frequency, microwave, radio, and gamma rays. You don't see them. It has been noted that some have been able to see that, the gamma rays, for example, in a very strange way, for a short period of time, just so you can know that they exist and they don't look the same as what you would anticipate. So in that, you may see them, and then no need to see them anymore. The same as various levels of clairvoyance, the same way. You may see a certain way for a while, and as long as it's not the only thing in your life that makes you of value, it may be drifted away because there are other levels of perception that can be helpful to you to broaden out your engagement with higher states. So the business of being empty inside is not you being of no value. It's not you reacting to somebody else. It's you encountering the heart center under certain conditions. And those conditions are to broaden out your ability to engage with those three lower centers and to link up with higher state centers, or so-called crown center, throat, brow. These centers also have their lower aspects. You have people who have them all open, and you can, if you have the ability to perceive at that level, you will notice they're all open to some degree. And they are, in the East, they are considered very able yogis. And they are. But they relate to the personality belief systems. And they have some mystical powers, siddhis, and they may use them for their in a personality way, because that is what we normally do. This is not negative. This is how we do things in the early stages of our development. When I say early stages relating to a yogi, I'm talking about early stages of yogiship, not early stages of personality interaction and relating to what's important, what's not, what's right, what's not. But there is a part of that still in the reference points of a person who is growing. This is a key thing. It means that whatever level you're on, you're only there for a time, could be a short time, could be a longer time, so that your ability to link with other centers, since we talked about the heart center, if as it begins to open, it opens relative to the personalization or the emotional disposition or the physical engagement. And as it begins to open with the mind, which is another level, it includes the throat, includes the brow center, and will include the crown ultimately to some degree. If it opens with those centers, the emotional mind begins to quiet down. So your dispositional relationship can still functions in the way it did before, except you see it as a function of that form the way it was before. Now that is an aspect of the heart center ultimately linking with that throat and brow and crown center. And there is another level. There's three levels of that heart center that open. And that level we are, no, we're not even close to. We're not even close to the second level. So we're working with that. Many are working with this and are able to engage to some degree. And those folks they have the knowledge that they are working with it, growing in it, but are still not broadly engrossed in it because the species cannot handle that kind of a thing, because their ability to transmit is magnified at the deeper level, not on the surface level. This is a real valuable thing to try to understand. I tried to cover that the best I could, Deborah, and there may be things that I've left out, so I apologize about that. Let's take a look. How does this emptiness affect those close to us? Good question. They will be affected in their personality. As I said before, it may look like you're backing away from them, and you're not. But the vulnerability that each and every one of us have in relationship to caring for others, loving others, is that we want to be loved back. And we believe we would understand if another loved us and was loving us, and we loved them and they were loving us back. We believe that we would know exactly what that looked like. And it's not necessarily true. A deeper level of loving would include transmission to another to help them to grow. Also, their growing would affect you if you are the one who's having that happen. Since it's your question, I'm going to answer it like that. That emptiness is not empty. It's profoundly stretching the capacity of an individual to function differently than it was before. And this is related to energy flowing through a person and maybe influence from another state to operate through. With the heart center, as opposed to you only utilizing that center with a conscious engagement, and this can be done, so that others will be affected by it in some way, whatever it may be. I'm talking about a heart center that's beginning to open to be able to link to a higher aspect of consciousness and able to handle that flow coming through them through any center that the heart center is linked with. And that could be solar plexus, could be a brow, could be a throat, could be a gonad center, could be a root center. I remember I said that and I wondered whether people would say, what? A gonad center? How is that possible? Because it's a heart center, much higher. They link together in a whole movement to have a composite, ultimate composite of a single chakra coming together. Now, this is just way out of our understanding completely. This is like talking about science fiction. But we don't understand what that would look like because our perception level would not pick it up. We would have an instinct about lower systems already coming on, but they would have to pass the test of what you believe has to be true. And the dilemma with that is, if your perception is not broader past the personality stage, only as being valid, right, wrong, good, bad, whatever, then you will assess them. You might judge them as if they're someone you should be nervous about because there's something off about them. Off in what way? They're different than you, and how you appraise life should be. This happens actually often every day. That's why when these upper centers come on, of their becoming involved with being a major center, including the brow, including the throat, or the crown, what happens is the individual has to begin to learn how to pull back and be silent inside and try not to even think sometimes about trying to help a person because they would be considered someone to be nervous about because the personality is not well developed. And that is normal. No offense, our personalities are not well developed. However, can't be true in our cases. True in our cases, can it? Oh, yes, it can. You might have noticed a few. I've noticed a few. You need a sense of humor while you're growing, that's for sure. On the converse, sometimes the emotion is flooding. Yeah, for sure. Flooding because if you have a center that's starting to open of its own accord, or at least with help from other centers, but it's moving in the direction of its own accord, it will also try to be of service to the ones lower than it. Now, this is important because there are many theories out there that say, well, that can't be. Only the upper ones are on, and now, therefore, you are now really important. You need the lower ones on to survive. These are very, very interesting planes we're on. They're basic structures. And they're vital. And as we grow, do we expand in both capacity of receiving flow and broadness? As we gain capacity, does that also mean we have broadened ability to relate to more and different frequencies? It's possible. It may not be. You might have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 frequencies that you operate with. And as you expand, you may keep those because it's sometimes thought that only a certain number of frequencies can be handled by us. Well, that really depends on the level of growth that you've attained. So it may be 1, 2, or 3. And you may utilize those because they're needed in a community quite badly so that they can stretch and the community can begin to grow differently than it could before. Not how it was before is not bad. Nothing to do with good or bad or right or wrong. Just different. Just different. That's all. Deeper. A little more subtle. Whatever that would be. How can we work to remain both open to new and different flows and frequency while also protecting against frequencies that might be not helpful? It's not about frequency that may be not helpful. It's more about personality structures. It's really interesting that the astral plane it's got like every other plane, it's got the lowest kind of engagement and the highest kind of engagement. The lowest being everyone is on the astral plane. Everyone. And all your thoughts and all the way you think and all how we often engage. But also at the same time, the astral plane also has the images of the highest able beings that have ever been on this planet and are on this planet, whoever they may be. And those engagements can affect you if your interest is in that department. It's got to be sincere. Well, that's not mine to call. Since I am a person, I'm as sincere as I can be when I'm thinking I'm sincere. The same would be true of anyone else. But the interaction with frequencies from a very high state, whether it be in the astral plane or the mental or beyond those states, the soul, whatever you want to call them, not everybody uses those words, then your engagement with them, your ability to handle that flow is what becomes important. Compassion and loving at higher states is in a very high state. If you are not quite able to handle a certain frequency, then you'll not be asked to handle it unless you are right at the cusp of being able to handle something, and you will be helped to handle it. It may be uncomfortable for you, but you'll be helped to handle it. And that is not a negation. That's just what appears to happen. So respectfully, I say that because I've experienced some of that, and I know others have experienced some of that help as well. Why is it so difficult to move beyond ingrained belief systems, even when we know logically they are not helpful? Logic, growth doesn't follow the kind of linear logic that many of us follow. It follows an interactive logic. It's a multidimensional logic, very abstract in its sense. A perception of someone given by that person of themselves to others. When someone talks about themselves and tells them how great they are or how not great they are, that is not looked at from a perspective related to the individual involved. Its potential is looked at. Its current inabilities are looked at, and they are helped to be slightly adjusted if indeed the individual's belief will allow them those images to be adjusted. There can be images that are vital to an individual to maintain their sense of value. If they do not have these, this sense of value that they have created within themselves, they will think that they're not worthy of anything. And that is not related to loving or compassion or not helpful in the enablement of an individual to go beyond where they are now. They need time relative to some form of interactive relationship in the abstract, for example, another life or 2 or 10, to feel more comforting within themselves with broadening out. The release of what they believe has to be true in their version of them. Otherwise, they will not be worthy of engaging. And this, of course, is difficult because everyone is worthy. But the individual has to be okay with being worthy of continuing their relationship with growing. So it goes from zero, where a person doesn't have any interest in growing. They just have an interest in maintaining whatever they do. They may be doing that because that's what they need to do to find some kind of broader balance. So they wouldn't be forced to grow more unless one little codicil. They are really capable inside, and they just don't know it yet. And then they might be presented with things that might be helpful and may not be able to see them, or might be able to see them, or maybe help to see them. Somehow, this may also relate to a heart center, but it can relate to any center. A broader engagement with the solar plexus, for example, which can link all the way up to the crown at that level. Broader relationship with the throat center or the brow or any center. This is kind of interesting territory to be in, but It's not always easy to understand. I can only use my words, and I know that they're not perfect. Also, is it fear of survival we can that can keep us stuck in those belief systems? I think we've already talked about that in relationship to it's not only survival, but it can be, but it's value, the value we place on ourselves and the need we have to maintain a sense of value that relates directly to our own personalizations, perceptions. Our dilemma currently is that our perception is very low while we're thinking it's very high. That's not a criticism, it's just how we are. The personalization, even in spiritual orientations, are truly quite fascinating because we ache to be more important than other people somehow. This has traditionally been our training. You know, the old oyster, if you have an 84 and someone else gets an 82 in your high school or college, university, somehow they're better. It's not real. But on paper, it looks that way. Many people have done really well in exams, have failed in life. Well, not failed, but can't make sense of it too well. But many people who have done very well have made sense of it very well. So there's no automatic. And we engage to the best of our ability in terms of what we believe we need to do. And that creates a value system based on our beliefs. And we still are held with the idea of this person versus that person. Really interesting. Excuse me. Dust. So I hope that helped a little bit, Deborah. Maybe sometime when we're talking, you can ask something else that I might be able to, that might be in relationship to this. And I just want to wish everybody well and continued meditations and doing the best they can with what they are, because you're really worthwhile, as we all are. Life is precious. Please be careful. Take care of yourself. Bye for now. Now just begin to do the balancing and grounding on your own, and have a good evening.